accessible design is disabled specific, and it's a much more narrow focus to accommodate. When we do follow kind of we do divert away from categorizing society into us and them and start thinking about we, inclusive design come into its own. And it requires us to think outside the box. It requires us to be proactive in user engagement. It requires the more knowledge than you would otherwise put in. It almost it negates the idea of having to retrofit something. Rather than being an afterthought, it's already there. So by engagement in the right areas, we can hopefully eliminate reactive retrofitting. And this requires a lot. So for example, if we think about when we go to make a product, take a car, and say you want it to be electric. Now, the first electric cars were quite quiet and not really, didn't make noise. So you may think, brilliant, no noise pollution, but actually, if we did the research of, we diversify our research stage, we find that assumptions come in. And to negate these assumptions, we have to actually engage with those outside of our in-group, outside of our user mentality. And so with the quiet electric cars, the massive thing that was missing was sound. Now, sound may be for a typically developed, ordinary pet-like person. This is not as important as it would be if, for example, you were sight impaired or blind. So actually you rely on the noise of traffic to navigate roads, and be safe on roads. So the gaps in the research, the conception, idea, and subsequent research, if we make assumptions too early on, we end up becoming misinformed. And that can actually skew data and research into assuming we have a product that works. And maybe actually looking back at ideas, we can learn from those ideas. I've been talking for a while. Essie, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I think we were talking for a while, but I think it was all really relevant and made perfect sense. And actually, yeah, I think the car example, the silent car, is a really, really good example of how it's not just assuming that it's going to work for everyone, but by making that assumption, you're actually putting people in danger. So, for example, I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago, actually, when we were talking about unconscious biases and stuff like that. But it's true that, you know, a partially sighted person or a blind person, relies on their other senses to know what's going on. And when your sense of hearing is impaired because it's silent, you're going to walk out into the road. And, you know, if you walk out in front of the car, the silent car at the wrong time, it's a dead person. So literally not bringing everybody into the designing of something that's going to be used by the majority of people is putting lives at risk. And I think that the point you made also about, you know, designing something that brings people into the fold at the beginning is better for your business, because instead of retroactively having to go back and sort out what you haven't done in the first place, you can actually get it right in the first place, and it works for everyone, which increases the level of engagement that you have with your customer base, and it brings more customers in at the same time because people talk about it, and they also know that you as a business care about what you're producing. So I was going to share a ladder of participation, if I can, because I want to introduce the idea that there's a few styles of participating and getting people to support you with your design. So I'm just going to share that. So we start with this ladder, we start from the bottom and we work our way up to the top. So at the bottom we have and I will say, when you look on the internet, you'll see loads and loads of these different forms of ladders of participation, and they're generally used in a social care setting. So I have created kind of and adapted my own for kind of more of a business purpose. And so when you look, they're not right or wrong, they're just all used for different purposes. So at the bottom of the ladder, you have no engagement, where the organisation has no methods or processes in place for engaging with other people or getting views of others, which means that actually when somebody says, well, why didn't you think about disabled people? They say, well, there's no way for us to ask them. Next stage on the ladder is information. So the organisation then tells their customers and their employees what's going on. And the customers' employees might think, I have a better way, I can think of a better way of making that work for the organisation. However, they haven't been asked, so they're just being informed, and therefore they can't do anything. The next step on the ladder is consultation. And consultation is when the employees and customers that are engaging with the organisation are asked by the organisation for strategic ideas at certain points within the journey. So they're not necessarily asked to consult on everything, they're asked to consult on specific things, and the organisation might or might not use their comments and thoughts to make changes. So next one on the ladder is participation, where employees and customers are asked to participate on specific projects and outcomes. So, I mean, as you see, as we go up the ladder, it gets better and better. So participation is brilliant, where it brings people in to help to make strategic changes on specific things. But the problem with participation is that if, for example, there's a group of people that are asked to kind of help to produce a certain thing, and then they make suggestions, and then the organisation says, oh no, but we can't do that because this is happening over here and it will interfere with that. And we can't do that because that's how we fitted this in the past, and we can't change that for this reason. So then we move up to co-production, and co-production is like the singing, dancing, brilliant thing. And so that's when the employees or customers and the organisation come together from the same point. So they're not so the organisation is not bringing in the employees and customers at a certain level, maybe halfway through, maybe near to the end, but right at the beginning of the journey, before anything has been discussed, bringing people in at that point to co-design and to co-deliver that product or service. So we don't even have an idea specifically in our head of what we're going to design. We sit in a room and we know that we have to design something new, and both sides of the party are working together to think about what will work for the organisation, but also what will work for the end users. And then they're working together to create something that works all the way through, and using the experiences of the users and also using the experiences of the people within the organisation to come up with something that works for both. And the true gift and the true brilliance of co-production is that, and true co-production is that everything is managed on the level of what people need it to be. So for example, if you're consulting or even participating with your users, it might be in a room with people that really know, about the subject, and they're using all their acronyms and everything, and they've all had the paperwork before and they all know. But then lowly old me might come into the room as the user and say, well, I don't understand these acronyms. You haven't given me this paperwork. I'm actually really intimidated by all these people in the room. Therefore, I'm not going to share what I truly think, because first of all, I haven't had time to process and to have any ideas about it. Second of all, I don't have the information I need to make a meaningful contribution. And also, I'm so intimidated that I feel that I can't say anything anyway. So the idea of co-production is, it's more like a round table thing, where everybody is on the same level, everybody comes into it at the same level, everybody's requirements as far as access and everything else is met, so that everybody feels that they can contribute the way they need to come up with meaningful solutions and suggestions to the product or the service at hand that they're designing.
I mean, can I jump in there?
Yes, please do, Sarah.
And just mention a kind of, I guess, elaborate on what you were saying about how it can make you feel. Because actually, we are very woundable as people, in a sense, and I'll use the example of, say, having a revolving door to an entrance to a building. For example, if there is no other door to use other than the revolving one, I actually feel quite affected by that. And actually, when we think about that, what's going on under the surface, it has a bigger trajectory than just being a door you can't get through. This may impact your the perception that the people inside have a lack of knowledge about what I need and what I might be thinking about. And that perception can lead all the way to impact my performance. But if you do not feel welcome because you can't get in, even if you get in at some convoluted way, you're going to feel a little bit uneasy.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, attending an interview, for example, this puts a whole layer of indecision and impact the potentially the performance in that interview. Because actually, if you're perceived, if you're not even thought about at point of entry, what does that say about the culture? What does that say about the inclusiveness of the organisation? So it's bigger than being a design. It has impact on more than you can know. And actually thinking about these things are vital in thinking about inclusive design.
You're absolutely right, Sarah. So the webinar I held with Sarah Teichler on Friday, where we were talking about the accessible and inclusive environment, really touched a lot upon what you're talking about. And I think it's important to remember for those that may be listening that don't, because you are so right, that actually it's all about, that first entry, that first kind of impact onto the business in you. But I'm also thinking about the people in our audience that might not have those massive budgets to change those things. But there are small things that they can do to help in that situation, people still feel valued. And we talked about that a little bit on Friday. For example, having somebody close to the entrance is looking out for somebody who might need a bit of help coming in. I mean, that's so easy, especially when you know that somebody is coming in that might need a bit of extra support. So in an office scenario, if somebody's coming for an interview and you've asked them about their access requirements and they say, oh yes, I'm blind, I will need help from the entrance all the way up to the room, then you know to look out for them and you know to greet them. So you say, hello, Simon, welcome, thank you very much for coming. I'm here to just help you through, and so on and so forth. So that even if you can't make those massive changes right at the beginning, when you're planning for it, that you can put things in place to help people still feel welcome and valued before entering the building.
Yes, and there, as you said, that there are ways of mitigating without the top need being retrofitting.
Yeah.
So as you said, there are some organisations and businesses that will not be possible to do, but the mindset of the people and the attitude and the level of knowledge can be changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shall we go on to discuss how we design inclusively with disabled people? So we've kind of discussed the why and the bigger picture, but shall we talk about kind of specifically how we start doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, cool. So let me know if, again, you want to have a look at those slides and I'll get them up for you. But you know, the ladder of participation is still on the screen. I would like to refer back to that for a second. It's not always going to be possible right at the stage, although it's always the best option, but it's not always going to be possible right at the beginning to co-produce. But there are ways that you can reach these steps on the ladder, especially kind of the middle ones, the consultations and the participations. And that works, I think, internally and externally with businesses. I think that there's some of the things that the businesses do already to engage their employees through employee engagement surveys, through focus groups and forums, and through oh, help me out, Sarah, I forgot the name. Groups are really, really helpful, but I think it's about harnessing that. I was saying, help me out. Can you get in my head and tell me what I'm thinking? I think it's about harnessing that and using it to the best of your ability and making it really clear to your audience, whether that be your employees or your external customers, the reasons why you're doing it and what you're going to get out of it, what the benefit is for you as an organization, but also the outcomes for the people getting involved. And I don't mean the tangible benefits, like you would get a pay rise at the end of the year necessarily, although that would be lovely, but actually, helping somebody to feel part of that workplace community, helping them to shape something that was not already shaped. And then also supporting those people to understand how they can participate and interact. I think when it comes to these things, a lot of people feel that there's a linear way of doing it and there's only one way, you can't stray from that way. And that's scary for some people. So for example, if people have in their minds that the only way to participate and to strategize with the new design of whatever, of the wing of the building or the new clothing or the car or something, is to sit in a boardroom and have a meeting, it's going to scare people off. So it's about having those options for people and saying, this is one way to do it, but also we can do it this way as well. Sarah, I can see you were trying to say something.
Just to sort of expand again on what you were saying about there not being one way of doing things. There's often, especially now, is often the need to diversify methods of engagement. If we're not reaching, before we go on to that, I think transparency, what Essie was saying about telling people why you're doing things, can really help. because if you're honest about what you're trying to do, you're much more likely to get people along.
Mhm.
And if you accept accountability, there needs to be a point of accountability there. And actually, transparency doesn't really work without that. And we can empower people by diversifying methods of interactional engagement, by diversifying how we do things and what we're doing them for is equally important. And recognizing when we don't have information, it's almost equally important to recognize where you do have a gap in knowledge, because then at least that gap is recognized. And without recognizing that gap, the data we collect in research and development stages can easily be skewed towards the end. We can make inaccurate assumptions based on data that is skewed, that is biased. And the danger of that is that your end result becomes not only bit of bias, but also actually exclude people, and you're actively excluding people by not recognizing the gap, right? Or by not recognizing why you have to do more. And so when we are transparent about those gaps, again, we tend to attract, okay, well, what can we do about this?
Mhm.
Requires outside the box thinking. It is not an easy ride, but the end result is better if we do it in this way.
So can I put you on the spot and ask you a question, devil's advocate? How do we recognise when, this is our first experience of this, how do we recognise that we don't know? Because it's so easy not to know what you don't know.
I think remaining mindful that there are different perspectives out there, remaining accountable to the fact that we want to know more,
Mhm.
and in that knowledge, in the same breath, in fact, never shutting down the possibility of engagement.
Mm.
Actually, at a road test stage, you can engage, where it's maybe not possible to engage at conception, or inception of the idea. If that's not possible, we can road test it. We can invite people to test it out. I mean, for example, one of the earliest camera phones was designed for right-handed use. And it wasn't until the model got out in the ether and people realized, oh, not everyone's right-handed, they're going to have an issue here. And then they retrofitted the configuration software to switch it around. So it can take putting it out there in a road test format to realise it and not shut down any conversational dialogue.
Yeah.
And open to more.
And I think that's really important as well, because sometimes, if you just say to people, what do you want? It's really hard to answer that question. So, this is what I've come up with. What do you think? Let's jump off. And so I agree, it's absolutely fine to start, depending on what it is, start, in that middle bit as well. I was just thinking, Sarah, I was watching a program the other night, and it was based around a law firm, and the law firm was a Bain law firm in America. It's a drama, it's not real. Somebody was doing a kind of expose on this organization and on this law firm, and the first thing they said was, you know, you're the first diverse law firm in Chicago, or the first truly diverse law firm in Chicago. And I thought, well, they're not diverse because they're one element of diversity. They're not diverse because everybody is Black, and that's not diversity. And I think it's really important to remember, and I think it's really relevant for this conversation, that when we're talking about diversity, it's not a certain characteristic. If you're all that characteristic, you're not diverse. Because the idea that the massive benefit and the impact of being diverse in an organization is that you have lots of people with many different experiences, not one experience that's different from the majority, but lots of people with different experiences. So I think that even if you are a diverse organization, maybe you're a Christian setup, or you're a disability organization, or you're I can't think of another example, an all women's group or something, you're still not diverse when it comes to shaping a new idea that's going to work for the majority of people. It's still important to involve other groups in your discussions.
I mean, following on from that, I think that it's such an important point that you know, to reiterate fully, but that diversity doesn't equal inclusion either. You know, people can get confused about and the distinction between diversity and inclusion. Inclusion is respecting and valuing people, you know, respecting and valuing and wanting different perspectives to not only engage but to thrive.
Yeah.
And equally and on the same playing field. And when I get asked, you know, often, oh, don't you think that was an inclusive panel? And I'm often to no, actually it wasn't. No. Because actually their idea of inclusive is having one woman on panel. That is not an inclusive panel made. That's a diverse in one strand panel made.
Yeah.
And to point that out, it can really actually help people to learn the distinction and the inclusion about respecting all and valuing all people.
And it's such an important distinction. And I think this is the problem with buzzwords. But again, if I start down that path, then we're going on to another conversation. But absolutely, as a wheelchair user, people say that to me as well. Oh, it's an inclusive panel. Oh, really? Well, I can't reach your podium. So how is that inclusive? I'm sitting right at the front and I can't get into the audience because of stairs. How is that inclusive? You know, just because I am your one diverse person in the audience does not mean you're inclusive or that you're diverse.
I mean, going back to the point of the video, but bringing that in, it's all right to say, actually, you know what, it isn't as inclusive as I wanted to be. We want to do more. We want to make it inclusive, and by almost verbalizing that fact, you are striving to be inclusive. That's even that's just recognized and addressed, you're one step closer to becoming inclusive.
I agree. We are going. Brilliant for bringing us back. Well done. And it reminds me just really quickly of a panel that I chair. So it's a panel of it's I co-chair, I should say. It's a panel of disabled people in Hampshire that strategically co-produce with the departmental management team of adult services to make services better for disabled people. And everybody there is disabled. You know, that is the point of the group. It's for disabled and disabled service users and carers. So in one strand, you could argue that that's not diverse, but it's set up for a specific reason to get lived experience from users that use the service. And in order to use that service, you have to either be a carer or a disabled person. So sometimes being exclusive in that way is not a bad thing. It's not a no-no. And the way that we are inclusive as a group is that we recognize that disability is intersectional. So it's not just about being a wheelchair user, it's about every impairment, but also every diversity that comes with a person. So like I always say, just because I'm disabled doesn't mean I'm not a woman, doesn't mean that I'm not mixed race, and doesn't mean I not love Robbie Williams. So we want the diverse inclusion of all disabled people that represent that group of people. I know it's a lot to consider, so you might want to reach out afterwards to continue this conversation, because it's a lot to cover in an hour.
I think because of the enormity of this, the conversation that's possible, it's been difficult, actually, isn't it, to narrow down the points in a useful way. But just to sort of try and address that a little bit more, we try to be, when we are designing things for everyone, we must think about the holistic being and holistic thinking. As you said, it's everyone's intersectional. It is not categorically, it cannot be categorized. And the more we adapt our thinking to think we and not us and them, the more inclusive we become. And actually, when we engage with people, we are actively wanting to know, and that involves actually perhaps dropping the agenda, dropping your own agenda, trying to stop micro behaviours of inattention, and actually listen to what's being said in consultation. I've been in consultation meetings where the chair, or no, where the one plenarian has gone away with the same agenda they came in with, because they weren't actively engaging. And so a consultation took place, but was it actually useful? And so this is we can't just bring people together and expect answers. We have to be strategic about how we ask questions, when we ask them, and what the purpose is behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And being open and transparent about things, again, helps with that inclusive nature. And only then it will be accommodating for all needs and useful for everyone.
Absolutely. We're going to move on to next steps, but I just want to add something to that, because I completely agree. And I think, and you said it before, Sarah, and I think the more transparent you can be about why you're engaging with people, to yourself, to your team, and also to the people that you're hoping to engage with, the more that they can give you, the better outcomes you have. Because if you're clear about what your goal is to begin with, then it's easier to stick to the point, essentially, to the goal, to the agenda. So I can see some questions coming up, which is really good. We have a couple of next steps and action points for you, if you would like. So the first action point is to think about how you can encourage meaningful engagement with your disabled audience. What are the small things that you can start with now? So to help you answer that question, you might want to look back over previous webinars when we've talked about kind of engaging and communicating with disabled people. They might help you with some of the strategies that you might want to think about for kind of starting those conversations in the first place. And the next action point that we have is, how can your organization benefit from engaging, collaborating, co-producing with disabled users, customers and employees? So I think sometimes it's really easy sometimes, and I've been there in organizations when you know it's the best thing to do, but part of your job is convincing your line manager and the people above you. So what ways can you think about to help them to understand how this will benefit them? So we talked about in the beginning things like it's cheaper to do it the first time round than to have to go back and refit it the next time round. You have a service that works for everyone, or a product that works for the majority of people, because you're never actually going to make something work for absolutely everyone, because it's impossible to represent absolutely everyone, just because we're all unique and we're all different. So yeah, so those are two of the things that you might want to start when you're thinking about those two things as well.
I mean, can I just bring up my slides for a minute?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping this will go a little bit of a way to answer the question we have from an anonymous attendee. We have a design engineer who feels if product designers and their user groups are separate as they are, and separate groups, how would we go about as a designer reaching out and finding the disabled people with disabilities for their opinion? I guess hiring a consultant is one of the best things you can do. They, like myself or Effie, in fact,
Indeed,
we have knowledge of what other out of our own disabilities. We have a vast amount of knowledge directly received from others for this purpose, and actually to aid in assistance like this. And you're right, it can be quite separated out, but by bringing kind of results together and amalgamating them, we can go further in our stage of development and test and retest it, and so approaching a disability or inclusive consultant can really help there. We're unable to cover so much of what is needed today, but as I said, this is only scratching the surface of what is necessary. To address, what can happen if we do not, what can happen to society and business, and the impact of actually risk involved, not only for people but for businesses. The risk and impact of not recognising other perspectives can be, you have limited consumer diversity, you have the bare minimum safety requirements and health requirements. You risk your brand, your business, and you risk not growing and not reaching the kind of marketplace. You risk increased costs and money and resources. You limit your overall footfall, and your brand suffers. And the most important one is that actually reverse and retrofitting, it costs money, and actually to invest and take your time with engagement will aid that not needing to reverse or retrofit, which can cost more than the actual thing itself. I want to move on to the next slide, I think. To the benefits of inclusive design and infrastructure. Forgive me, the infrastructure portion is for an engineering company that I work with, but it can be applied. So it becomes user-centric, and intersectional thinking is such a benefit. You reduce isolation, you have improved mental health and well-being. You improve physical health, social well-being. You increase your consumer diversity. You diversify and therefore increase your overall footfall. And you create innovative design. If you truly take perspectives on, you innovate and you become better for it. And actually, it can turn out to be a lower overall cost if we are accessible for all. That's just a little, taster of what benefits and what risks there are to not including.
I think you're absolutely right, Sarah. Thank you. And to go back to Anonymous's question, I think you're absolutely right. And I think, yeah, it's always a good idea. I don't advocate for Sarah and myself, but it's always a good idea to get somebody who is an expert in that area to come in and help. But we understand that that's not always possible. So I would say, just ask. And I know that sounds a lot easier than it is. But what I mean by just ask is, with nearly 14 million disabled people in the UK, you don't have to go far to find disabled people. So using your communication methods that you have at hand. So, I mean, without knowing specifics about your organization and how you work, I can only answer generally, but using social media, using your customer user group. So, I mean, I always say that everybody always sends out feedback, and they ask for feedback on how their service and how their products can be improved. But not many people ask specifically about disability. So whilst you might not want to say, do you have a disability? Well, therefore, can you answer those our questions? You might say something like, we recognize that we have a diverse range of customer base, and we want to make sure that we're designing products and services that meet everybody's needs. And then ask some specific questions about what you want to put in place to support people, or what you have and what they think of them. Or if you don't know, ask specifically, how would this service / product be improved to support any access requirements? And then you could give examples of what you might be talking about. So in disability, you might talk about, for example, for mobility impaired people, for sensory impaired people, and so on and so forth. So just asking the question and not worrying too much about how you ask, as long as you're not offending, which I'm sure you're not, because you can always refine as you go. But asking that question in the first place will bring people out to start answering, because I think the biggest thing for any engagement group is knowing that they want to be engaged with. And so if you're showing people that you actually value what they're saying by asking them the questions and telling them what you're going to do with their responses, you're going to encourage more people to come forward. And with that, telling people what you're going to do with the responses, being transparent, being honest, and saying, well, you know what, at this stage we can't benefit, and we can't guarantee that we're going to put forward all your ideas, and nor should you have to. However, we will tell you what we've done with your feedback.
I mean, and to add in a little bit, Essie, there, to diversify your communication.
Yeah.
And to reach the people you want to reach, or even just bring in whoever bites. But actually, if you do recognize that people communicate differently, and you have 4 or 5 different methods of communication available, for example, a pictorial information leaflet or questionnaire can be useful for those who are perhaps deaf or foreign, you know, because actually written English is not always accessible for those who are deaf or foreign.
Or that English isn't their first language.
Yeah, that's something, yeah. And also the neurodiverse, neurodiversity, that we have to think about how we communicate to reach those people who perhaps are not the most forward people. So you have to think about your communication and the methodology of your reaching out and evaluate if it's working or not. Not working, change it. And the more you do that, the more you'll learn about diversity in as a whole and trying to find diverse perspectives outside of your own perspective, which can again lead to innovation.
You are absolutely right. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So we have a few minutes. Does anyone else have any questions? When I have no questions, I always just assume that I've done such a wonderful job that, you know, there's nothing else to say.
I mean, I have a question for you, Effie.
Oh God, okay. Your questions are always really tough.
I mean, I've actually been that red-handed here and haven't asked you how you best communicate. How do you best communicate, I think?
It depends. I mean, I think, you know what, I think I like face-to-face interaction. I think for me that is the best. I mean, it's the thing that meets my access requirements, but it's also the thing that engages me the most. To use a term for the best engagement is the engagement. But it's face-to-face, seeing people's faces, seeing their reactions. I think also as a trainer, I have trained myself to react to people's facial expressions, so the micro expressions that I see. So if I feel I'm hitting the mark because somebody's smiling or they're raising their eyebrows or they're kind of nodding to the right, I think, okay, I'm hitting the mark, they understand. Whereas if they're kind of frowning their brow, or, you know, they're a bit confused, I can say, okay, I can think to myself, okay, I'm not quite hitting the mark here, I need to change direction and try another way. So for me, the face-to-face engagement is the most important. How about you? We've got one more question, but how about you, Sarah?
I think it very much depends on my mental health and how I'm feeling. But typically, on a typical day when that's lighter, I love a good chat, and actually conversational approach is best. But you see how we can even find, you know, us two discussing how we best communicate. You hopefully can take away from that actually we're quite a similar thinking, but we have slightly different needs, and different things work for us, and way of communication can, if you get the sweet spot, you're in, you know. And so it's all about that open dialogue and trying to understand what really is needed and how we can make it possible.
I definitely think, I completely agree. And, you know, this has been kind of the theme all the way through, but adapting and being flexible, adapting your style to be flexible for different people's needs. So it might not all, I mean, it might be to do with the access requirements of people. And that is a very important thing to always note, that actually, even, you know, if you're, I mean, I know at the moment we're in lockdown, but, you know, if you're having your engagement kind of focus group in central London and you are asking disabled people to come along, there might be many disabled people who physically cannot attend, not because your building isn't accessible, but because of the environment around, because of the support they need getting there, and so on and so forth. Maybe because of anxiety around being with other people, about using public transport, and so on and so forth. But it could easily be that disabled people are busy. So if you're having your meeting at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, and you're wondering why not many people turned up, it could be because they have jobs, or they have children, or they have other things to do. So kind of doing the same kind of methods of engagement to find out what your consumers need as you would if you were not talking about disability. I find a lot of the time when people know, especially when I talk to marketing people, they know exactly how to market and promote and engage an audience, but they say, how do I engage an audience? And I say, well, take the word disability out of it, and then you know the answer. And so don't think of disabled people as completely alien concepts that actually can't communicate and engage. You just have to adapt yourself slightly, but the main things still engage people in the same way. We're at 2 o'clock. I would like to say thank you so much once again for joining us. I've really enjoyed today's session. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us as well. I think this conversation style really works. And I hope that people do too. In the next 72 hours, I will send you the recording of this webinar, and I'll also send you a link to a feedback survey. And if you could take a few minutes filling that out, that would be amazing. And if you do want to, my contact details are always on the emails, but if you do want to get hold of Sarah, I will make sure her contact details are there as well. Thanks very much. Tell everybody else about the webinars. For once, we don't have another webinar till next week. So yeah, I hope you don't miss us too much. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you for having us. Bye, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming, Sarah. You're welcome. Oh, no. Oh, we've just seen one more question. I don't know if this person's still here.
Answered that, didn't we?
No, there's a new one. What I will do, because I know that Layla has to go as well, what I will do is share this with you, Sarah, and then we can maybe answer it over email and send it out.
Okay.
But yeah, it literally just came through as I said goodbye.
Oh, okay.
So, okay, brilliant. I'm going to close this down. We can catch up in a second.
Okay,
thank you very much, Layla. Bye.
Thanks, Izzy.
Thank you.
We have a call.
Yeah. Bye, Layla. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.